What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. It's good to see you again. Today it is part 2 of the interview with Shane Balkowitsch. I hope you'll enjoy it. Check out the links down below in the description. That'll take you to his new book. Enjoy the video.
I've been wanting to do this for a while, to sit down and talk and to talk about this experience. So it was it was a magical moment. We got the 2 exposures, and I only had at the end of the day I only had 20 minutes with her, so it was rather remarkable. Upon leaving, they were rather rushed again. Upon leaving, I shook Savante's hand and thanked Greta, and I asked her father, I said, what can I do for Greta? What can I do for her and her cause? And her father looked at me and he said, Shane, you've already done what you can do for Greta. You've taken these 2 beautiful portraits of my daughter today. He says, now the only thing you can do for me is share them with the world, and with these images, her message. And he shook my hand and and they left. And that was my 20 minutes with Greta Thunberg.
Yeah, that's a really great story. Eric, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I was thinking you're talking about the challenges of trying to do what you do outside. And my full-time job, I actually work at Gettysburg National Military Park. So a lot of times we talk about the experiences of Alexander Gardner, Matthew Brady, and his assistants.
Yep.
And they were here trying to do that same work. And you're talking about having this limited period to try to capture this iconic image that you want. And you have to deal with the conditions. Same thing that, Gardner and Timothy O'Sullivan were dealing with here.
You had the wind and you had the heat, and think about this. If you were a photographer, let's just say you're a digital photographer. Let's say you're a film photographer. It doesn't matter what kind of photographer. Any professional photographer, and you went to the photographer and said, you're going to get 20 minutes with Greta Thunberg, but guess what? You only have 2 exposures. Like, you can only take 2 pictures.
Yeah.
A digital photographer would take what, 500? A film photographer he'd do a roll, right? 36 or whatever, camera he's got. He'd do a roll of film, wouldn't he? I mean, you would think that, even back in the days of film, the photographer would do a roll of film. I mean, you'd snap and you'd go to the next exposure, and you'd snap again, and you would try to get as much as you want. But that's not what you have in the wet plate process. There's in my studio. I was in my studio from 8 o'clock this morning till 4 o'clock this afternoon, and I took 7 portraits. So in studio, we killed Christopher Columbus, by the way, today, in my studio. So that's a side story, but Columbus Day is a real. I'm called Shadow Catcher. Kelvin Grinnell, the elder from the Hidatsa Nation, held a formal ceremony, naming ceremony, in my studio, and gave me the name Meishte Akagoche, which is Shadow Catcher in Hidatsa. And Columbus has been on my radar for a while, because every Columbus Day, my friends, they struggle with Columbus Day. So I wanted to address Columbus Day. So today we addressed Columbus Day, and the plate was called Columbus Landed, Columbus Fell. And it's essentially one of my Hidatsa brothers, Alan Demery, putting a spear through Columbus the moment he embarks off the boat. And why that today is because history tells us that 80 million Native Americans have been killed since that Columbus landed. So I don't know, I got off topic on you guys. I apologize. You edit me however you want, but I'm just kind of sharing with you what happens here on any given day. You never know what's going to happen, but when you have an opportunity to capture Greta Thunberg and a historic process, and what's really special about this, and people always say, well, it's so difficult to process, and why are you using wet plate and all that, and there's a lot of reasons, and I already told you about the moments in time. So if you come into my studio, there's hundreds of plates on the wall, and every one of them, because in the broad daylight it was 3 seconds f8 with Greta, but in my studio I've got about 10 seconds of exposure. So your iPhone camera will capture an image at about 1/60th of a second. So 10 seconds of exposure is 600 times longer to capture a portrait than with the modern day technology. So that 10 seconds, those heartbeats and the thoughts and the shallow breaths and everything, these are motion pictures that are still lifes. The fact that a wet plate is made out of pure silver, the example that I use with the students when they come in is, I said, if you put a silver spoon on the ground and you come back 500 years from now, what's on the ground? And the answer must always be a silver spoon. And that's why these images will be here long after we're all gone. And the other beautiful thing about wet plate is the resolution. So these are some of the most high resolution images that man has ever made. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of that. I'm writing in molecules of silver. So a molecule of silver, and I tell this all the time, a molecule of silver at the tip of my finger, you can't see it, right? It's invisible. You actually need about 2 billion with a B molecules of silver at the tip of your finger to actually visualize them with the human eye. So making these images in this process, you can take any one of my wet plates off the wall, go to any microscope, and I don't care where you go, what at university, whatever power microscope it is, and you can put that wet plate underneath that microscope, and you cannot get to the pixel or grain that makes up that image. So these are some of the most high resolution images man has ever made. And in 1885 or thereabouts, we abandoned this process for something more convenient, less expensive. And as soon as the photographer could free himself up from the darkroom, that's what he did. Because can you imagine with the iPhones today, we made more digital photographs today. I don't know if you know this. We made more digital photographs today than in the first 150 years of photography. So can you imagine if to use your iPhone camera, you had to have a darkroom within walking distance? I mean, how many iPhone photographs would be taken today?
Yeah.
It
Yeah,
would
and I
definitely-
agree with what you say about the resolution. I mean, even what the Library of Congress has and some of the massive TIFF files. I mean, the detail you can zoom in on is just remarkable.
but that is just. I mean, you need an electron microscope, and there was a college that did a study, and they used an electron microscope to get to the pixels. That's what you need to get to the resolution, the grain of a wet plate. So, and of the daguerreotype was the same way. So these early silver pictures, that's what you need to get to those resolutions. So here's the point, is that this is one of the most beautiful, most technologically advanced photographic processes man has ever invented. And we gave it up for speed and convenience. And for me, that's not a good enough reason. And that's why there's about 1,000 of my brother and sisters around the world. There's about 1,000 of us. We think it's hard to tell. I run a Facebook group, Friends of Frederick Scott Archer, which is the gentleman that invented this. And we think there's about 1,000 of us that are presently practicing this process. So, I always joke, I mean, there's 8 billion people in the world. So 1,000 of us, I mean, there's probably more underwater basket weavers in the world than there are wet plate collodion photographers.
Hey, I can say I have 2 in the town I live in. So
that is fab.
But then again, I live in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. So we're constantly in the mid 19th century. So
yeah, you guys you're always living the Civil War down there, aren't you?
Yeah, whether we want to or not.
Whether you want to or not, but yeah.
Yeah, one of the Gettysburg photographers I know is on your group. I can't offhand remember his name, but I know
Rob
I've spoken to him. Yeah.
Rob is the man. I mean, Rob is the man. I mean, that guy, he is an artist, and it's fun because we call each other, we're brothers in this, and because there's just there's so few of us. So yeah, he's very good. He inspires me. So and that's the beautiful thing about this is we're all at different levels. You know what I mean? Like I was looking at my early images today. One of the college students came back in today and she wanted to see some of my early images, and I pulled them up, and it's just like, boy, we're all at different levels. You just keep going and trying to improve. And when I first started, there were giant leaps I felt like I was making. And then, where I'm at now, 7, nearly 8 years, October 4th, 2012 was my first image. I should also tell your listeners, I never owned a camera before that day. So obviously I had a camera on my phone, but I never took an earnest photograph in my life prior to October 4th, 2012 with my 5x7 wet plate camera. So I don't have any formal training. I never took a class, never read a book. And it was just kind of a self-taught with manuals and talking to people online and stuff. So yeah, it's fun being out there creating with these guys and these ladies, and we're always we struggle, and then we help each other out, and it's quite quite the brotherhood.
Yeah, and I think what you said earlier about the idea of, this plate that you take, I mean, with film or something digital, that plate was there at the site. And to me,
right.
That's what's always so fascinating. I've got to see some original Civil War wet plates in my life.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm touching something that was there.
The dust is there. I mean, collodion is kind of, it was like a medical glue that they used for like closing wounds up in the field. So when I was down at I went with Ernie LaPointe, the great grandson of Sitting Bull, down to where Sitting Bull was murdered. I mean, I was making some plates down there, and like a piece of grass would get stuck in the collodion and stuff like that. I mean, these are, you almost think about, you think about history, about that these things are here, or you'll accidentally touch the corner and your fingerprint will be there. My wet plate of Murderer's Gulch, which is blown up 10 feet tall in downtown Bismarck, up in the right hand corner, if you look really closely, I can point it out to people that you can see my fingerprint's about the size of a basketball on this big print, but the plate was only 8 by 10, but you blow it up and there it is. Nobody sees it but me, but my fingerprint was in that scan, and I could have removed that, and it's part of the record. So it's really cool, and to think about those things, that was actually, those plates were there. These aren't copies, and that's why I love these. I do positive wet plates. That's to say that you look at them, you put them on your wall, you put them on your mantle, and you look at them, and they're for looking at. Back in the day, most of the photographers, and rightfully so, would have shot clear glass wet plates, and with those clear glass, like if Sitting Bull came into my studio, and Orlando Scott Goff, I don't know if you guys know this, but Orlando Scott Goff, a wet plate artist here in Bismarck, had a studio on Main Street. He captured the first photograph of Sitting Bull here in Bismarck. He paid Sitting Bull $50, and which is about $1,900 in today's money. And to think that, Sitting Bull came in and sat down, and he had that one exposure. It's kind of like that Greta Thunberg moment. Like Orlando Scott Goff had that one exposure with Sitting Bull. And we're not talking, many people took Sitting Bull's pictures later, because Sitting Bull figured out, well, this is a revenue source for me. So so he had his picture taken many times, but only one person in the world ever took the first ever photograph of Sitting Bull. And I took the first ever photograph of Sitting Bull's great grandson in the same city, in the same process. But back to my thought was that, if you had Sitting Bull coming in, or, you would take a negative, and then from that negative, you do contact prints, and I could make, I don't want this one piece of art that can't be duplicated, because they didn't have scanners and copy machines or anything like that. So they would make these negatives, and then from that you could make 100 prints or 200. But with every print, for me, and I'm not talking bad about anyone who does negatives, but every subsequent print kind of, you know what I mean? Like, if you lost a print, you can always print another one. And that's not the case with these two plates of Greta. I mean, there's only two of them, and I have no way of duplicating them. Those moments in time, and even if I had more time, let's say I had an hour with Greta, and that first plate, I didn't really like it, or something happened to it, I broke it, I could sit Greta down in that tree, and 45 minutes later, I could take her same portrait in the same chair, same camera angle, same exposure time, but I can get back to Greta Thunberg 45 minutes ago. So these are the things that drive me in this process. These are the things that excite me, is that these are like oil paintings. There's only one of them. I can buy a Van Gogh, or I can, print at Kmart. But there's only one original painting, and it's in some museum somewhere. So these are the things, and I'm a hopeless romantic. You're probably picking up on that when it comes to this process. But these are the things that drive me, and these are the things that I explain to people that come in, and these are the things that are riveting for me about the process.